This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
I think we can do that same thing in death. You play a little death deck, you have some fun, and then you get into the deeper conversations, and people don't realize that they're coming up with these answers that they never even thought about before. And then all of a sudden they'll say, oh my gosh, I want to plan my own celebration of life. I want to be there for my own celebration of life. And they start planning it. And you can see this light that goes off in them sometimes, and they go, how great is this? And it started by having a little bit of fun.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. Death Doula Jo-Anne Haun is my guest today, discussing her work as a death doula and how she finds growth and meaning in working with the dying. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
This episode of The Heart of Hospice is sponsored by Odonata Care. When caring for a loved one on hospice, support becomes essential. Introducing the Care Plan, a path to comfort for the hospice patient, a supportive guide by experienced hospice nurses Nancy Hireman and Brenda Kazire. Nancy and Brenda invite you to experience all that the Care Plan has to offer. Be sure to check out their free Library of Care videos on thecareplan.net or on YouTube. Purchase your copy of the Care Plan today at thecareplan.net. This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is sponsored by the Tree of Life Conference by International Doula Life Movement. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas, November 1st through the 4th. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. Attendees will hear from expert speakers like end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes and Death Deck co-creator Lisa Paul. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details.
Jo-Anne Haun is so warm, and she's funny. You're going to love this conversation. Jo-Anne is a professional death doula, a death educator, and she's the co-founder, along with Karen Hendrickson, of the Death Doula Network International. She has extensive experience in communication, negotiations, and conflict resolution, all with a focus on supporting others through difficult times. She's gained training and experience in emotional intelligence, workshop development, public speaking, and group facilitation. She's also a member of the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and she's committed to a regulated and monitored scope of practice for doulas, and she applies the utmost integrity and ethics in her work. One little known thing about Jo-Anne that at least I didn't know is that she volunteers in her community as a therapy clown. She is licensed for laughter and clowning. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, and you're going to hear about her, clown name, her special clown name. Jo-Anne has a work background as an insurance adjuster, which doesn't seem like there's a parallel to the work she does as a death doula. But the way she talks about it, she was used to working with people who were experiencing loss and dealing with grief. So there is definitely a connection there, and you're going to hear about that. Jo-Anne also told the story of how she became a death doula. And the story actually involves a psychic. It's a very interesting story. She lives in Canada, where medical aid in dying is legal, and she had the experience of being present with one of her friends who died using MAID, medical aid in dying. Jo-Anne also shares the story of the death of her 12-year-old son. She talked about what she learned, the meaning she's found after his death and during her grief journey as she moved forward after she lost her son, and the ways she still feels connected to him. She says, people remember how you die. There's a legacy and memories that are attached with that, and she focuses on educating the public about end-of-life planning. She shared with me that whenever she sees or finds a dime, it reminds her of her son. And so she keeps that connection to him, and it brings her comfort and it brings her joy. As a death doula, she says she has learned to have those uncomfortable conversations, and anybody who wants to be a death doula, she's got some good advice for you. You can connect with Jo-Anne and her partner Karen Hendrickson on the DDNI website, which is ddnint.com. That's Death Doula Network International. You'll be able to find that website listed there in your show notes. So sit back and enjoy. Here's my conversation with death doula Jo-Anne Haun. Jo-Anne, it's so great to have you back on the show. Welcome to the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Helen, it's always wonderful to spend time with you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Well, you and I sort of know each other. We've collaborated before, and you've been on the show before with your partner, Karen Hendrickson. So I'm going to ask you an icebreaker question so my listeners can get to know you a little bit. I hear you volunteer as a therapy clown.
That's true.
Do you have a special clown name?
Buttons.
Buttons.
Buttons, because the outfit I have a black top hat that's got great big buttons on it. I've got the jacket that's got great big buttons on it. And it's easy for people to look at me and just kind of connect the name with the outfit. I got Ronald McDonald shoes. They're just great big, wonderful.
I love it. I love it. I have to say I'm a little bit conflicted because clowns creep me out just a little bit. So I understand the fun and the therapeutic side of things, but also you're a little scary.
Well, it creeps Karen out too.
You're just one red balloon away from being that character from the It movie.
But you know what, though, Helen, because of that and the stigma that clowns have, we don't wear a lot of makeup.
Oh.
So I might put a little bit of blush on, a little bit of makeup, lipstick. I got a red nose I have 3 noses, actually. It's the only time I'm able to pick my nose.
Jo-Anne, that's You've been waiting to use that joke. I can tell.
I use it all the time.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So you're a groundbreaker. This is the first time we've had a therapy clown on the show. I should have had you show up, although my listeners can't see the video because we don't capture that. But I should have asked you if you would wear it for our Zoom call. That's awesome.
I'll send you a picture, Helen.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Buttons, let's get down to the serious topics. Working as a death doula, what drew you to that kind of work? And what kind of support do you provide to people who have serious illness and their caregivers? You support caregivers as well.
We do. What drew me to the work? Well, my professional background is as an insurance adjuster. So if your house or your business burns down, I'll help rebuild and try and get your life back to normal as much as possible. So really, I've been dealing with grief for 35 years or whatever that is. And in 2017, in December, I hit the wall. I'd had enough. Insurance companies weren't providing the type of coverage that I thought people deserved, and I just hit the wall. So I did a telephone meditation with a psychic, and she was asking about my skills and my interests, and out of the blue, she said, I want you to write this down, Death Doula. So I said, what's that? She goes, Google it. So we continue on with the session, And I get off the phone. I send a note to my friend Karen and said, check this out. This lady told me about this death doula. Have you ever heard of it? Well, next thing I know, Karen starts sending me a bunch of articles and information about what that was. I also sent it to a very good friend of mine who was down in Arizona for the winter, and she starts sending me information on death doulas. And then in January of 2018, my friend that was in Arizona was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And she said to her husband, look, I'm going back to Canada. I need to be at home. I need to figure out what's going on. So at that time, I was living in a different part of the province, and I packed up my office and I came back home to Kelowna to hang out with her and another friend. And I was able to walk the journey of from the diagnosis right up until her death. In the meantime, there's a death doula course that came to my hometown of Kelowna. And, I believe that there are no coincidences. So as I'm walking this journey with my friend, learning about death itself and seeing the gaps in the system, this course comes up, which I had to take. So my friend Jan said, I want you to come and see me every day after your class. I want to know what you've learned today. And so what actually happened was my class was in March. So I'd been with Jan January, February. Classes in March, it went from Monday to Thursday. And on the Friday, Jan died by medical assistance in dying. So, everything just kind of fell into place. But before she died, she said to me, you have to continue this work because people need help. They need guidance. They need support that the medical team just don't have the time to give. So I kind of made a promise to her. And that's how I fell into this. And then, of course, Karen's getting more and more interested in it as well. And she took the course too later that year. That's what happened.
So you had this lived experience at the same time you're going through the training.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, what an incredible parallel to be able to put together. Most people who go through nursing school don't have that kind of experience. I went through labor and delivery, but I didn't have a pregnant friend and subsequently see the birth of her baby or anything like that. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So here's maybe kind of a silly question. The woman that you talked to that was the psychic, did she know what a death doula was?
I don't know. Because when I asked her what that was, all she said was Google it.
Interesting.
So I have no idea, Helen, but I believe there's no coincidences. And so somehow this came to her because she said to me, I don't know why I'm saying this to you, but just write this down. Well, okay.
I mean, that's pretty random.
Yes, it is. Uh-huh. And then for Jan to get her diagnosis within a couple of weeks of me having this discussion. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That's one of those goosebump moments, I think.
It is. And, it's provided me with lived experience on, I got to be there when she met with the oncologist who tried to encourage her to take chemo, and she refused that. I got to be there. Again, these are random visits at the hospital. I got to be there when her GP came in to see how she was doing. And I asked the doc if they could send her home with some medication because she wanted to die at home in 2018. And the doctor said to us, Helen, that because of the opioid crisis, we're not allowed to do that.
Oh, wow.
So my friend looks at this doc and she said, I'm dying, right? And I'm not going to get addicted because I'm going to be dead.
Right.
And, it actually ended up being a pretty emotional discussion. Doc came back a couple hours later and said, I had to lie, but I got you the medication to send you home. Now, what would have happened if we hadn't questioned the doctor? She would have maybe died in the hospital.
Yeah, which I'm assuming was not her goal.
No, she wanted to go home.
She wanted to be at home.
And the medical assistants in dying, the medical staff up here are not allowed to offer that up as a possible treatment unless they're asked about it.
So the patient or the family has to bring it up?
Yes. But how do you bring up something you don't know about?
Right.
Not everybody. I don't read the news. I don't read newspapers. And there's a lot of people out there that don't. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have the internet.
Yeah.
So how do you ask about something you don't know about?
Interesting. Very interesting.
I'm a big advocate for the medical assistance in dying as an option. I don't encourage people to do it. I just offer, are you aware that this is an option?
Right. It's about education, giving access to it, providing details when that's an interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jo-Anne, for the laws that you have there for medical assistance in dying, is it one national, federal law, or does it differ from province to province?
It's a federal law that came into effect in 2016. Each province deals with it differently. Fortunately, in British Columbia, we are very open. Victoria, BC has the highest rate of assisted deaths in Canada. The different provinces have different stumbling blocks, I think, if you will.
Right. I like to talk about it on the podcast because it can be a hot button issue, right? Regardless of whether you work in healthcare, where you work in healthcare. And a lot of people, they have moral objections, they have ethical objections, they have professional questions, and each state is different in how the law is written, and it's not legal in all of the states of the United States. Where I live in Texas, which is, the south central part of the United States, medical aid in dying is what we call it, is not legal here. But I think that every hospice and end-of-life worker should know what it is, know whether it's legal in their state. So if they are asked, they can provide that education. We are not called to give our opinions, but we are definitely called to share the knowledge and the resources that we have. So that's why I like to talk about it on the podcast. I don't do opinions. My personal opinion is my own, but I definitely think that even hospice professionals that do not support and would not participate, because you can choose not to participate in it as a healthcare practitioner, they should still be able to educate their patients and the families.
Absolutely. And there's so many myths out there that I got a call from a friend of mine a couple of months ago, and she said to me, my brother is an alcoholic and he's depressed, and his daughter wants him to choose maid.
Oh.
So I said to her, well, just so you know, if those are the only two conditions that he has, he will not qualify. And she said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was just horrified when the daughter said, you want to consider this. There's safeguards in place.
Right.
It's not like you can just call your doc up and say, look, I'm done. I want to go. And they perform the procedure. That's not how it happens. There's a lot of misinformation that's being given out there, people's own biased opinions. I understand that. Coming back to my friend Jan, she died by maid, and I got to witness one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. Was her final hours. And I realized how beautiful it can be. And so we help people, whether they want to go by maid or not, we help them prepare for their final days and how they want their surroundings to look and who they want with them, and, trying to make the end as good as possible. Maid is an option for some people, and for others, it's not.
Right. And as a death doula, you meet people wherever they are and provide that support, that companioning, the education and the resources. When is the best time to bring a doula on?
When you're healthy.
Because that's when you're healthy. In other words, earlier.
So yes, the earlier the better. Now I understand a lot of people don't contact us until they're getting close to their death.
Right.
Which is okay. But if we can meet them earlier on and get to know them personally and be the eyes and the ears of the doctors that can't be there with them when we are, that I think makes the journey a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You guys deal with supporting them as they move towards the death. You talk about advanced care planning, support that caregiver, anticipatory grief. You help them deal with that. And then you also manage, well, not every doula does, but some do grief and bereavement counseling support after a death. I want to touch on the grief portion of things. So, Jo-Anne, you have a very personal experience with loss and grief. Will you share your story with me?
Of course I will, because my story teaches others. So my 12-year-old son died in 2002 unexpectedly. He had been born with a heart defect back in 1990, and at that time the doctors told us that the chances of him living past 5 days is probably not realistic. So they said 3 to 5 days if you're lucky. We had him for 12 years, 2 open heart surgeries, one to fix a hole in his heart, and the second one when he was 10 to replace a pulmonary valve. And he was out playing soccer. We're getting ready for a tournament, May long weekend. Got a call from the coach that Andy had collapsed on the soccer field. So I zipped down and didn't wait for 911. I took him to the hospital myself. And they worked on him for 7 hours, and they just couldn't save him. He died massive pulmonary embolism. So he had a blood clot in his heart. We had been at Children's Hospital February, so 3 months prior. He'd had his physical, and he was great. Passed the stress test. Doc said, yeah, he's doing great. And he just died. So that has taught me, a lot, from the diagnosis of your son has a very rare combination heart defect to you're going to have him from 3 to 5 days, living with that fear, and then watching him handle the open heart surgeries, watching him bounce back, watching him being a part of life. That kid lived life more in his 12 years than most of us do in our lifetimes. And, when he had his second surgery, he was 10 years old, so that would have been in the year 2000. We were sitting in the hospital at Children's Hospital in Vancouver, BC, and a little boy came into the hospital, and it was in the bed across from Andy, and he was frightened. So my son got up off of the bed on his own. He's 10 years old, gets up, and he goes across to the little boy and starts talking to them. And the other little kid said, I'm afraid. I'm scared. I don't know what to expect. So Andy opened his shirt, showed him the scar, and said, look, I had surgery a few days ago, and look at me now. And so he was teaching at that time. He was teaching me how to help others. And he was teaching that little boy that, you can survive things that you don't think that you can. And I tell that story as much as I can because I learn from it every time I tell it. And I am doing that in his memory. So my focus right now, not my focus, things are falling into my path right now about child loss and how to support parents through that. Because as much as counselors or doctors and the medical team try and help, unless you've lived it, it's different. It's a different kind of loss. Yeah. Then I think that's what he has been teaching me.
It's an amazing legacy for a little 12-year-old boy.
Yeah. But then, there's more. So this year, what is this, the 6th of January? First 5 days of this year, I tell you, a friend of mine died unexpectedly on Tuesday. He was 63 years old, had a heart attack. He died. 2 of my friends have been diagnosed with end-stage cancer. And then yesterday, I got a call from my best friend of 50 years that her nephew had died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
So I'm questioning the lessons that I'm supposed to now. Yeah. But there's got to be learning in it all. That's what I keep hearing. I just don't know what it is.
There's always something to be learned from things like this. The grieving that you've done through the years with Andy, because I'm assuming that the grief started when he was born and you were told he has
That's
this
right.
condition. How has that changed how you support? How does it influence how you support people who are companioning a loved one who's dying?
I think it's given me a different perspective in that I can help them realize that there is life after the death. So I supported a young lady last year. So last year was 2023, 2022 in September. I started supporting a young lady who's 36 years old. So her mom's a friend of mine. And that 36-year-old I used to babysit when she was in kindergarten. And she had cancer. And so I went to the hospital and I started supporting her. And she had said to me that she was able to talk to me on a level that she couldn't with her own mother because she knew my son that died. And she said, "You've lived it before, and I'm very afraid for my mom and my dad after I'm gone." And so I helped her understand that they would be okay and that they have to go through the grieving process. And I kind of gave her a few things that I had done, different therapies that they can do. And it's important to talk about child death, medical assistance in dying, suicide, drug overdose. People don't like to talk about those. And I told her mom at the time, I said, your friends are going to be well-meaning, but they're going to drop off because they don't know what to say to you. And so they're going to start staying away because your daughter is dying. And it was about 6 months later when the mom said, "You know what? I didn't believe you at the time, but that's exactly what's happening." So the lived experience has given me a different perspective, I think, on certain things. I don't do grief or bereavement.
It's just not part of your doula work.
No, and I think, Helen, a lot of it might be due to compassion fatigue. That was part of my job, really supporting people through their catastrophes during my insurance career and helping them rebuild. And so I think it's it's taken its toll. So I don't offer that as a service.
Well, and isn't that very parallel to what a doula does in a lot of cases?
Yeah.
You're coming to people that are in a crisis. They have or they've already had a loss. And then afterwards, you're helping them rebuild, learn to deal with the grief, moving forward with it. So you were burned out. You were absolutely burned out. So no, I can totally see how that happens. And I know there are hospice and end-of-life workers that move away from bedside care. They still want to work in end-of-life care, but they move into administrative side because that becomes a huge weight to keep carrying, to deal with the compassion fatigue that comes with that. It makes total sense.
Yeah, it does.
In a world where compassion and community are needed more than ever, the International Doula Life Movement presents the Tree of Life Conference. Join IDLM November 1st through the 4th in San Antonio, Texas for an extraordinary experience in end-of-life care. The Tree of Life Conference is not just an event, it's a movement towards making a positive impact. Attendees will hear from expert speakers including award-winning end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes, Lisa Paul of the Death Deck, Brenda Kazire and Nancy Hireman of Odonata Care, and end-of-life advocate Helen Bauer, host of the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Tree of Life Conference is more than just workshops and seminars. It's an opportunity to connect, learn, and renew your commitment to compassionate care. This event is made possible by the team at International Doula Life Movement, who believes in the power of empathy, education, and making a difference in the world. Don't miss out on this transformative experience. Join IDLM at the Tree of Life Conference in San Antonio, Texas from November 1st through the 4th. Visit internationaldoulalifemovement.com for more details and secure your spot today. When caring for a loved one on hospice, support becomes essential. Introducing the Care Plan, a path to comfort for the hospice patient, a supportive guide by experienced hospice nurses Nancy Hireman and Brenda Kazire, with over 40 years of combined hospice experience. The Care Plan is your trusted companion, a wealth of knowledge from clinicians who understand the unique challenges of hospice care. Nancy and Brenda provide practical insights in their book, along with a library of guided videos that offer caregiving tips and techniques to make caregiving easier and simpler. The Care Plan isn't just a book. It's a source of strength for those who navigate the challenges of caregiving, ensuring that every moment is embraced with compassion and care. The goal of Oda Not a Care is to transform the end-of-life experience through education and support. Nancy and Brenda invite you to experience all that the Care Plan has to offer. Be sure to check out their free library of care videos on thecareplan.net or on YouTube. Don't forget that the Care Plan is also available in Spanish. Purchase your copy of the Care Plan today at thecareplan.net.
So with all this experience that you've had, life experience, lived experience with Andy, did you ever identify closely with a client or a caregiver in a way that was beyond the boundaries that were healthy for you?
Well, probably with my supporting of young Jody, because her mom was a friend of mine. I spent time with the family, which I typically would do anyways. But there was a heart connection with her mom that I don't usually allow with other people. And I think if I had not known her, it would have been a little bit more distance, if you will. It's kind of hard to explain.
No, I think distance is probably, it's a relational distance that you would not have had. You think it would have been easier and you would have handled it differently if it had been someone who was not a friend?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
So when you have a situation that, I don't like to use the word trigger, but I think that's sort of, it communicates. When you have a case that you identify with, people who are your age, someone who reminds you of you as a young parent, someone who reminds you of Andy or your spouse, how do you manage those emotions as an end-of-life worker, as a death doula?
Well, that's where the community of support comes in. So my partner Karen and I have been friends for almost 25 years. Andy had the biggest crush on her, and she knew him, right? So I will oftentimes lean on Karen when I can for support. I also have a couple of other friends who knew him and that can understand the triggers, and I will debrief with them, and then we end up telling stories that make me laugh and sharing the memories. So that kind of takes me out of the grief of the situation with the doula and puts me into, oh yeah, he was a little bugger.
Somebody you can say, remember how he used to do this. Remember when we did this.
Yeah. And yeah. So the support network of friends and other doulas who have dealt with different situations, it's so important.
It truly is. Tell me about an experience with a client that impacted you deeply, either negatively or positively, but something that impacted you or taught you something very important.
I think one of the most important lessons I got was with my friend Jan on how important it is to be an advocate and to say to the doctors, I understand what treatment you're offering, but I don't want to do that. And it taught me in a way how to question the medical team without being offensive, but yet to stand up to them and say, okay, understand what you're offering, but it's not something that I want. I want the quality of life over the quantity of life.
So you had a unique experience. You sort of had on-the-job training with your friend while you were going through your doula course. But that experience taught you perspective as a caregiver for advocacy, which is a huge thing. I think a lot of times patients don't have the energy or they've always followed what the doctor says, so you always follow what the doctor says. And we're getting away from that. We're understanding that the doctor's not in charge. The way I put it is the doctor's the quarterback, but the patient is the coach. The patient calls the shots, calls the plays. But there's a huge lesson about advocacy. Advocacy takes energy, it takes awareness, it takes knowledge, and it takes time to communicate. But advocacy is a huge skill it can be a burden. It's hard for people to be an advocate. So learning along with Jan like that, really on-the-job training, I think that was hugely valuable to you.
It is. And to let people know that there are options. So my mom died in 2014 of kidney failure. When she decided to stop dialysis, the doctor said to us, probably about 10 days. So I flew down to Toronto to be there with her and my sister and my brother. And she declined. She developed a secondary infection that was very painful when she was touched. But she was on a ward in the hospital. And because she was on a ward, they had to take her vitals every hour. And so I would leave the room. I'd go down the hall about 100 feet or whatever, and I could hear my mom screaming. And so I'd go back and I'd speak to the nurse. And I was told repeatedly, because she's on a ward, it's hospital policy that we have to do this. We were not given the option of hospice. We were not told about palliative care. We were not told really of anything. So I finally said to the nurses and the social worker, I'm taking my mom home. And I was told that if you do that, you're going to kill her. I said, well, you guys are killing her here. And so we had a discussion, and within about 4 or 5 hours later, miraculously, they found a palliative bed for my mom. I didn't know anything about end of life. I didn't know about hospice. I knew nothing. Those options were never given to us. So from that experience, learning about how we have to advocate for ourselves and educate, up to Jan's experience, I've learned a lot. And if, that memory of my mom's suffering is going to stay with us forever. People remember how you die. And that's going to stay with us forever. So if I can take somebody else's experience like my mom's, educate and support and advocate for them and make that a lot easier, then I've done my job.
Wow. Sounds like the education was needed for the healthcare workers as well.
Yes. Healthcare workers, my understanding, Helen, is that the healthcare workers don't get a lot of end-of-life training.
Same thing holds true here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Sure.
I understand that there's a variety of skills in different areas that you can learn about and educate yourself in, but end-of-life isn't one of them. That's where we come in on the education, and that's my personal focus now. I'm not taking any new doula clients. My focus is educating the public, educating other doulas on skills and options that are available out there. I'm going to be doing some workshops locally about the value of advanced care planning. People don't even know what advanced care planning is. They don't know that, if you don't have a medical representative appointed, you might end up with somebody making a decision that isn't in your best interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing workshops about that, and of course about medical assistance in dying, because there's too many myths and misunderstandings out there about both of those.
Absolutely. I think Canada and the United States have a lot of similarities when it comes to the obstacles that we face, the challenges that we face, upstream conversations. I find it a little ironic that inside the healthcare continuum, right, from birth, childhood, all the way through healthy adulthood, maybe chronic disease, terminal disease, and death, that we don't have that training for our healthcare workers, because every single patient we have is going to come to the end of the life. Mm-hmm. Now, every nurse here in the United States has to go through labor and delivery, but not all of our patients are going to have babies. Not all of them are capable biologically of having a baby. And yet we have to go through that training. But I don't have any training, not formal training through my college degree on death and dying, on end of life, or advanced care planning.
Yet everybody's going to die. Yeah.
Yes, 100% of the patients I've ever seen will die. It's upside down. It doesn't make any sense.
But people don't like talking about it. I think a lot of people think if you start talking about planning for your end of life, planning, for your death, that your death is going to happen right away. And that's not how it works. I talk about winning the lottery. Haven't done it yet. I talk about death and dying all the time. I'm still here.
That's true. I've been talking about death and dying for the last almost 15 years, and I'm still here. And I think about the lottery all the time. Talk with my husband about it. We haven't won a dime.
So, there's proof that you can talk about this stuff and it's not going to happen right away.
Yeah, I'm not that powerful.
Nor am I.
No.
Nor
But I understand. It's sad. It's hard. It's a terrible reality. Nobody wants to think about it because it is a loss. It's an ending of so many good things. And we don't want to talk about it. But if you think about that loss as being made deeper and more intense by a lack of planning, what if you just had one conversation? Just one. We know you need multiple, really, to have good advanced care plan conversations. It's never a one and done. But what if you just had one?
And that's all we can do is we can start with one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
We can have fun with it. So are you familiar with the Death Deck?
Yes. Love them.
That's a wonderful tool to start the conversations. And some of those questions, I just laugh. At them. But they're great conversation starters, and they get people thinking about death and what they want and what they don't want. And I think that's a great segue to opening up the conversation. Let's play this little conversation game. We've got multiple choice questions. You start with that, and then you get into the deeper things.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I liken that to, I taught my kids math by playing crib. So they had to add up their hands. They had to add up the points. And we were having fun and they were learning and they didn't really realize they were learning. I think we can do that same thing in death. You play a little death deck, you have some fun, and then you get into the deeper conversations and people don't realize that they're coming up with these answers that they never even thought about before. And then all of a sudden they'll say, oh my gosh, I want to plan my own celebration of life. I want to be there for my own celebration of life. And they start planning it. And you can see this light that goes off in them sometimes. And they go, how great is this? And it started by having a little bit of fun.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom and serious. We understand, yes, there's a death involved for all of that to be set in motion. But the conversations don't have to be as if the death is happening right then. You don't have to put on black and wear your mourning veil to have a conversation about a celebration of life or end of life wishes. I think there's a lot of depth and humor, all sorts of different circumstances and qualities to these advanced care plan conversations that can make them personalized to your family, to your family's communication culture. Like the Death Deck is not for everybody. No. It's a wonderful tool. I love it. It has some very irreverent questions that are funny, and then it's got some very reflective questions about end of life and our views on end of life. Some people don't enjoy the humorous part of things. And for some people, that's all they want.
Absolutely.
That's as deep as they want to get into it. So I think your advanced care plan conversations that are not with your healthcare provider, you're not going to play the Death Deck with your physician, right? I think those conversations should be customized to what's comfortable for you, just like your advanced care planning. It should be what you want. So how you have those conversations, if you want to document them a certain way, if you want to handwrite everything and put them into legacy letters for people, then that should be part of your advanced care plan.
But people need to be aware of that's an option.
Exactly.
You can have some fun with it. I told my son, when I die, I want a big banner that says letter RIP, letter RIP. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
But have some fun with it, because I want to be remembered for the good things, not the bad things. And I want people to be sad. Yeah, you're going to miss me, but you know what? I'll be sending signs down.
I love that.
I believe that people do that. I find dimes all the time, Helen, when I'm having a bad day, when I'm in a crisis, when I just need help. And I know that my Andy is sending those. I can't make up some of the situations where these dimes show up and I just shake my head and go, thank you. I'm going to be doing the same thing.
I like that. What kind of sign would you send me, Jo-Anne?
Oh, Helen, I don't know.
It might be something bad. I'll trip over something and there's Jo-Anne.
Yeah. With Karen, it's crows. Crows are her dad.
Really?
And so whenever we're together and we see a crow, she goes, "Here's my dad."
Oh.
It's awesome.
It's a connection. It's a connection.
And I know it helps me with my grief. When I see these dimes show up, when I need them, it gives me a sense of peace.
He's still with you. I'm with you, buddy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some of them, I just can't make up these stories. And I just shake my head and go, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe things happen to help us learn, help us grow, change. So I'll share a little bit of my advanced care planning. So you want people to celebrate. You want to have a sign, letter RIP, letter RIP. I love that. So for me, I make a joke about I want people to weep and wail. Don't be coming all celebratory to my funeral. No, listen, you better be acting like you're upset. Don't be coming in all decked out like you're having a party, that nobody's celebrating that I have gone to wherever I'm going. And I told my sister, I always like to hear a eulogy that's honest. I'm not saintly. Don't paint me that way. Talk about my struggles, talk about who I was, talk about, my short temper, talk about my parenting that was probably too strict with my kids, things like that. Just tell who I was in reality. Share my flaws. That's fine. So I told my sister that, and she says, "Oh, you can bet I will." And I thought, you know what? You're not going to do my eulogy now that I think about it.
Have you considered writing your own?
I have. I've actually written, like in a writing prompt, I've done an obituary, which was kind of fun, kind of different, but I haven't ever written my own eulogy. I'd like to give that a try. I came to the belief a few years ago, at least for me, that my advanced care planning up to the time of my death and the disposition of my body will be all about my decisions and my tastes. But after that, I think I've decided that I want all of it to belong to my kids and my family. If a celebration of life is something that gives them comfort, then that's what they should do. If music that they like gives them comfort, then that's what they should play. Because I've been to funerals for close family members and I'm listening to the music and I'm going, this is some sorry crap. I hate this music. She liked it, but it gives me no comfort at all. So I think funerals and services, memorial services, they're about the grievers.
Absolutely, they are.
That's just my personal view. That is my personal view. So I'd like my girls to play, my children to play what music soothes them. It doesn't have to be my taste.
That's true. I, on the other hand, have already chosen my music. I've told my son. It's funny. I was at a fundraiser last night and at a hockey game, and they started playing the Mario theme. Dun, 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 dun,
oh, yeah, yeah.
And I said to the people I was with, they're going to play that when I'm dying. I want to hear that music when I am dying, because when my oldest son was about 3 years old, he and my dad would play Mario. And I'd hear that all the time. And it makes me smile. It's something that soothes me. So while I'm still alive, I want to hear the Mario theme. After I'm gone, well, I still have a playlist because, I got a controlling personality sometimes.
That's okay too.
Yeah. I want a celebration of life while I'm here, though. There's a song by Tanya Tucker. I always butcher this up, but I think it's called Send Me Flowers Now. And she talks about, don't wait until I'm dead. You want to give me good things, do it while I'm alive.
Do it now. I love that.
And I want to be part of that. I want to hear what people have to say, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And so I can reciprocate with them as well. You say good things about me or what we've done, or if I've wronged you in any way, well, let's make that right. Let's open the door to forgiveness, to whatever, because I don't want to leave you with regrets. I'm sure not going to take any with me. So that's just my person. I want to hear it. I want to be there.
I love that.
And then when I die, that'd be for my intimate circle of friends. And then when I die, then they can do something public for, if other people want to come.
I love that. So, Jo-Anne, what would you tell someone who is interested in working as a death doula?
Oh, that's a good question, Helen. First off, I tell them that they need to be right with their own grief, that they need to be comfortable talking to people about death and dying. So they themselves need to be comfortable with it. Like, you can't have a conversation about something that makes you uncomfortable. I've been to workshops where the presenters are telling their story and they start crying, some uncontrollably, which, in my opinion, isn't the position of a facilitator. Right? So if you want to be a death doula, don't be afraid of having uncomfortable conversations. Don't be afraid of asking questions. You can do it respectfully. Make sure that you've got a circle of support, because we can't do this by ourselves. We need to debrief. We need to have others around with us. And most of all, I tell up-and-coming doulas, you don't have to do it all. There's a number of different areas that the doula can specialize in. So when I came out of my training, I'm going to do advanced care planning. I'm going to do vigil. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Well, that lasted about 6 months. And I went, hold on now. You can't do it all. So just pick an area that speaks to your heart, that's near and dear to you, and start out there. And then you can branch out and do different things. And if there are areas, like for me, I don't do grief, but I refer them off to people that do. Vigil's not my favorite, but I've got a friend that loves it. So I would refer, with the client's consent, I'd refer them off to somebody who likes to do that kind of work. So get a circle of friends, of support, professionally, personally. Pick what you like to do. You can't do it all, and check your ego at the door. Because one of the most important things that a doula has to do is not be attached to the outcome. We can make recommendations. We can say, this is available to you. Have you considered this? And whether they do it or not is entirely up to them. It's not a reflection of us as a doula. And that's a hard one for people sometimes.
Good advice. Jo-Anne, how can listeners connect with DDNI and see the workshops that you're offering and become a member of the community there?
So Death Doula Network International, just so listeners know, is co-founded by me and my partner, Karen Hendrickson. You can find us at ddnint.com. You can get in touch with me at Jo-Anne, JO-ANNE at ddnint.com. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, and we've got websites. I also have a personal website. So you can get me at Jo-Anne, JO-ANNE at EOLA.ca. So my doula site is End of Life Alternatives.
Wonderful. We'll have all of that in the show notes so people can go in and connect with you. Jo-Anne Haun, thank you so much. You're warm and honest and wonderful. Thank you for being so present and so open in our conversation today.
Well, thank you for inviting me on the show, Helen. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and send your questions or comments to me by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.